Hi everyone, very excited to start with this. I feel like a fangirl today. I have Lulu Raghavan with me, who is the MD of Landor and Fitch India. I am a huge fan. I have read everything you've written, follow you very closely, and can't believe that I'm getting the opportunity to interview you today. Thank you so much for being here. I know that you're very passionate about the power of brands and excited to chat with you about branding and getting it right for a small business owner. Can you start by telling us, Lulu, about your journey with Landor and Fitch? How's it been?
Thank you so much, Shan, for the opportunity to engage with your wonderful community. I always love about talking about the power of brand, and my biggest disappointment is that brand is not well understood.
Yeah.
People look at it as logo, as advertising, as PR. It's all of those, but it's much more. It's actually fundamentally what you stand for, why you even exist as a business or as a person. So thank you for this opportunity. I've been with Landor and Fitch for 21 years now. That's been a long time. I think
Wow.
in this generation, people look at me and say, are you crazy? What keeps you going? Sometimes my clients even ask me, what is it that Landor and Fitch is feeding me to keep me excited? I think of my journey in 3 phases. The first 7 years I spent in San Francisco, where I started.
Okay.
It was Landor in those days before the integration with Fitch happened earlier this year. So Landor San Francisco spent 4 years in naming and brand strategy. That's when I truly understood what branding is about, what brand strategy is, why it's important to define the brand before you design it. Very formative years of the company. It was also our headquarters, so truly understood what the company was about. I then spent a couple of years in New York, different pace.
Wow.
Energy of Manhattan is unbelievable. Living in Chelsea, walking to work, it was a wonderful vibe. This is before kids, etc. I also got to spend a year at Landor in London. We did the rebranding of Jet Airways then.
Wow.
Airlines are in the news these days,
Yes.
and I think fondly on the project and what I learned about airline branding. So that was my first phase, the first 7 years. The next 7 years was setting up Landor and Fitch in India. My husband and I moved back in 2008, and I had an opportunity to set up operations here. I was paired with the head of the Middle East, and he and I did the groundwork, started acquiring clients, and built the business here. That was 7 years where we did big branding projects like the brand architecture for the Taj Group, the Mahindra rebrand, Cafe Coffee Day, the branding and design of the Delhi airport, amongst others.
Yeah, wow.
The last 7 years, the third
The
of the 21, I would say, has all been about mentoring and growth of my team. Elevating them, making stars of each of the folks on my team, and also mentoring others in WPP and outside as well. I've become really passionate about using my knowledge to help others grow and use their skills to the maximum. So that has been the last 7 years of my journey, and of course looking forward to much more.
Yeah. So now you guys know why I'm such a fangirl. I think those last 3 minutes told you everything about why I'm fangirling all the time with Lulu. So thank you again for being here. We're talking all things branding, which of course you know everything about. I want to start by telling you the audience is a small business audience, a mid-sized business audience, and we're talking about either when you're starting out or when you're at the phase where you realize you didn't invest in this correctly in the beginning and you need to make that rebrand. So I'm going to ask you how important it is to create a brand story, and are there any tools that small businesses can use to really get their brand story right in the beginning?
Absolutely. Fantastic question. Brand story is actually everything. Going back to what I said earlier, it's really important to get the strategy right before execution.
Yes.
And Shan, I learned this when I was doing a brand building course with members of the Leap Club.
Yes.
I had about 28 people in my first cohort, all small business owners, some of them brand managers at companies. But I was really amazed as to how well the content resonated, because I took what I've learned and made it as simple as possible. Brand story helps you understand your market, think about the audience that you're serving, and find something that's very relevant to the audience, but also quite differentiated from the others that are out there. So it's really quite critical how you talk about the reason you started the product. So if you think about Mama Earth and you go and read their origin story, or if you look at Pahari Local,
Yes.
all D2C brands, you really get a sense of what drove those entrepreneurs. So to those listening, I would say, can you tell your story in a few sentences? Can you tell it in an evocative and engaging way? And will it really draw consumers in, where they're as passionate about your products and services as you are? So getting that articulation right is important. You don't need a fancy agency. A lot of times you just need some clear mind space.
Yes.
I always say in branding, you have to go in before you go out. What does that mean? It's spending a lot of time thinking about what you stand for before you start a social media page, before you even select your name or design your website. So that articulation, some people call it value proposition, right? So for a particular set of consumers, how is your product different from anything that's out there? Why is it different? What are those supporting points that make it different? And then ultimately, what's the benefit?
Yeah.
So rather than saying we are the tastiest sauce out there, how can you say, will using this sauce make you a better cook, and so you can connect better with your families? What's the benefit of your product and services? So thinking about the story, not just in terms of why you started and what the product is about, but how it's going to add value to your consumer's life is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as a small business, we don't think this through, and we kind of sometimes, at least I've noticed, people put their money in the wrong places without thinking. So this is such a great way. You've explained it so well, as always. Thanks for that. I want to ask you also how important it is. This is another thing people don't do, is understand their consumer. And we all, like we say, consumer is king, but how is it that you understand your consumer, and what's the best way? Do we outsource this to somebody to research the market? What are your thoughts?
Frankly, it's the most important piece of it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite authors, and all of you should read him, from the branding world, his name is Marty Neumeier. He's written many, many books, including The Brand Gap and others. He simplifies branding. And he always says that acquiring customers is the first and most important task of any business. So if you're an entrepreneur, please don't outsource customer understanding. Go out there, go into consumers' homes, understand them, look at what's in their cupboards, what's in their refrigerators, how they spend their time, getting a real visceral sense of who they are, what their aspirations are, but also what their anxieties are, will give you a real pulse on their consumer. If you can't do it in person, you could do it on Zoom, on focus groups. In fact, last year, a couple of months after COVID, the folks at Nicobar organized a focus group, and I was in a room with 15 other women from all over India, passionately talking about Nicobar. And Shan, I can't tell you the insights that Raul and Simran got from that one call, and they did about 50 of those.
Wow.
Was super. So not very complicated. You don't need a research agency. The third way you can do it is to design a beautiful form using Typeform or SurveyMonkey. Ask the right questions, invite feedback from your consumers, and use all of that to paint a very vivid portrait of who's my consumer. So is it Shan, who's single, entrepreneur, loves music and dance, very particular about the products that she uses, so that everybody who's working on this business has a sense of who we're trying to serve. It's absolutely fundamental before you even think about value proposition. So you should be spending a lot of time understanding your consumer, and any question I ask you about the consumer, if you're running a brand, you should be able to answer that.
Yeah, so important. Absolutely. Okay, I want to also ask you, Lulu, about brand experience. Do you think that the brand experience has changed in the course of a brand experience has changed over the course of the pandemic? What was it like before? What is it like after?
I like to think of the analogy of a candy.
Okay.
Before it was the wrapped candy. The wrapper was really important, something shiny and glistening. You got attracted to the wrapper. And this was actually true even 10, 20 years ago. It was advertising, that made the promise. But Shan, today the candy has been unwrapped. The product itself, there's so much emphasis on it. Who made it? Was it made in an ethical manner?
Yes.
What are the products that were used to make it, the ingredients? That's the first layer. The second layer is the experiential layer. So how do I experience this product? How do I buy it? How do I interact with it? How do I meet other consumers who use it?
Yes.
The community.
Community.
Zareen is a jewelry brand and they have a wonderful community, right? And they're all about the community. And then the third layer is branding, which is communicating what it is. So I would say that post-COVID, the emphasis on experience and even product itself is much more so than ever before, because consumers are interrogating everything. They aren't just taking products and brands at face value. People are questioning, do I need to consume in this category? How much do I need to consume? What is this brand really bringing to the table? It's becoming harder for brands out there.
It is actually thinking, I was just thinking while you were speaking, that it's no longer just the purchase, right? There's so much more to it, like you mentioned. It's harder. It's definitely harder. I want to ask you on that note about word of mouth. Everyone depends on word of mouth when it's a brand, when it's an experience, it's a service. How do you think brands can actually strategically engineer this in their favor?
Fabulous question. I think it is to truly reimagine the brand experience.
Yeah.
Can you do things that get people talking? Airlines is one of my favorite examples. At Landor Fitch, we've branded over 80 airlines.
Oh, wow.
And so we're always studying airlines, looking at how airlines do it. And it's interesting because airlines don't have very much in their control.
Yes.
The weather is messed up, air traffic control delays them.
Yeah.
They ultimately get the bad rap. So they have to do a lot of things to earn the goodwill of the customers. Indigo is a great example. Every touch point is a talking point. Whether it's the crazy about nuts tin, for example. So really reimagining the entire experience. In fact, talking about airlines, when Kingfisher first launched, I don't know if you guys were flying a lot then, but the flight attendants, at least in business class, when they saw that you were wearing glasses, they would come and just offer complimentary clean of the glasses. Okay. Just a little touch, right? And of course, Virgin Air Atlantic that flies London to many cities is famous for its massage in flight. And it got everyone speaking. So I would say word of mouth, yes. But in order to engineer word of mouth, you need to create those power apps of the brand, those moments of disproportionate talk value.
Yes.
And that comes from creativity. It comes from understanding what the consumer will really value.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you a little bit about, adapting and flexibility. How adaptable do you think a brand needs to be, or nimble? Because, situations are changing all the time. We didn't see the last 2 years coming our way, and a lot of brands had to rebrand kind of, possibly shut down. What are your views?
100% adaptability, agility, resilience is absolutely key. Anti-fragility, which is the ability to learn from what's gone on and become even stronger. So those are all mindsets, which boils down to a growth mindset, right? So not a fixed mindset. As it relates to branding, Shan, branding used to be very, very rigid. It was almost like, if you think about building a cathedral, it was the foundation of that cathedral. You just polished it once the foundation was laid, right? It was about the logo and the placement, and it was all just very incremental work.
Yes.
But that doesn't work today. The world is changing too fast. Consumers are changing very fast. Competitors are making big moves. And if you're not alert and spotting opportunities, you're going to be left behind. So whether you're a Nike or you're a small brand that's just starting off, keeping an eye on the pulse of the consumer, And evolving is super critical. So finding new ways to deliver value.
Yes.
So for example, if you think about Tata Click Luxury, a luxury
Yes.
platform, post-COVID, they have home delivery. In a liveried car with a butler.
Oh.
How cool is that?
Yeah, lovely.
Right? And it's addressing the pain point of luxury consumers and stepping out of their homes. So how can brands continue to look for opportunities to strengthen their relationship with consumers?
Yeah, that's lovely. I didn't know that. Thanks for that example. I want to ask you, Lulu, this is something I've always wondered. How do we know when the brand is saturated? When is it time for a refresh? I'm sure a lot of people have come to you asking for advice. You think it's time for a rebrand. How do we figure that out?
The key is relevance. It really comes down to relevance. Are you continuing to be relevant to your target audience? Sometimes brands become a little bit old, right? So they're not relevant to a younger audience. Sometimes they may not be relevant to a more premium market or a more affordable market. So to me, the golden principle is relevance. You shouldn't rebrand because you don't like your look or to, increase any vanity metrics on social media platforms. It should come down to really looking at brand and branding. We think of brand as story and branding as signals. It's a signal system. So if I stand for authoritative, am I communicating authoritative through my clothes, through my voice, through the words that I use, through my mannerisms, the experience that people interacting with me have? So when your brand and branding are aligned, you don't need to rebrand. But for example, if your story is not relevant anymore, it's not as differentiated, you might want to rethink that. Or you're constantly adjusting the signal system.
Yes.
Right? You're ensuring that the signal system is communicating what the core associations of the brand are.
Yes, thank you. So I want to ask, what are some recent trends that you feel are here to stay, for brand strategy, and which people should actually pay heed to in terms of branding?
One of the biggest ones is purpose. It has a bit of a bad name because it's been used quite incorrectly by many brands, where it's become just about communicating purpose, and I don't want to take brand names here. But at the heart, this whole movement of purpose is to tell companies and brands that it's not just customers. We've been talking a lot about customers, but there are other stakeholders as well. Your employees, who are actually the most important stakeholders, your partners, your vendors, the whole ecosystem, investors, even the government. And so purpose is to also acknowledge that the core reason for a business to exist is not profit alone. It needs to truly be valuable to the community and the world at large. A related movement to this, Shan, is sustainability.
Yes.
I think that there is a growing recognition that we're plundering the planet, and many companies are taking a smarter, more responsible approach, and actually entrepreneurs are perfectly poised to take advantage. And we were talking about some examples earlier. The number of sustainably native brands that are launching and the passion of entrepreneurs in this space is quite tremendous. So purpose and sustainability I see as not trends, but very much in the moment. They both are having a moment right now when it comes to brands. And of course, the entire 360 experience has never been more important than before. So it's not just your website and social media, it's even your packaging, it's the experience. If somebody calls your call center or somebody from your organization, it's how you answer your Instagram emails. All of those touch points have an impact. Michael Eisner, the former CEO of Disney, talks about brands as a living entity. And he says they are products of 1,000 gestures. Every little thing matters. And so you have to be careful, because each touch point can either enhance your brand or it can really undermine it.
That's so important. I feel like you mentioned, like even replying on Instagram or replying to an email, that's part of your branding now. And I hope.
I'll give you an example. It was my husband's 50th birthday this weekend, and I ordered a cake from a lady on Instagram. It was a beautiful cake, and I had given her a message which said "Happy 50 Harsha!" exclamation, and she did it as "Happy 50 Harshal," and the cake got delivered. Fine, I took the L out, but I wrote to her and said, "Hey, it should be L, not exclamation." It's been 3 days; she hasn't even replied to me. Money paid, cake delivered, but I never got a response.
Leaves a bad taste, definitely.
That's what I mean. Of course, would I go back to her? Yeah, maybe. If somebody else is there, definitely. Right? Because those kind of things, at least she could have responded saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I don't know how that happened. It won't happen next time." Right?
Absolutely.
And that gives you a sense of the culture, what the company
stands for.
Yeah. The brand stands for.
That's such a lovely example. Lovely in the sense it's a good example, because I feel like the market is so cluttered anyway. So it's not like there are no other options, right? So that one reply would have saved the situation. My last question to you is, and this is something I actually dabble with a lot and think about, is how important is your own personal brand? Brand you. I feel like, is that a separate exercise that brand owners need to pay heed to now compared to the brand they're building?
Absolutely. Shan, I'm a huge evangelist for the power of brand you. Because just as with products, there are too many people out there.
Yes.
If you don't articulate your value, you won't get opportunities. People ask me, should I build a personal brand? Well, firstly, building a personal brand doesn't mean you have to have a website or you have to be on social media. It just means that you have to be clear on what you stand for. And you have to be intentional about the opportunities that you choose. And it really comes down to the level of your ambition. How ambitious are you? If you are really ambitious and you want to seize opportunities, you don't even know which opportunity is going to land on your lap, it's time to start building your brand. I think of it as quite simply done in 3 acts. You define your brand, you design your brand experience, and then you deliver it day in and day out. So defining is figuring out who are you. Are you a networker? Are you a brand evangelist? Are you the kindest teacher? Are you the most fun coach? Who are you, right? So really honing in. The second is defining your brand experience. That is, how do you dress? How do you show up in the world every day? All of that. And then the third part is the delivery. Are you then doing what you stand for in every interaction? So it goes back to that gap of what you stand for, the story and the signals, minding the gap and ensuring that it's always aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lulu. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I feel I've learned so much just chatting with you today. It's been lovely having you here. Wish you all the best with everything, and can't wait to interview you again after maybe 7 months. I won't say 7 years because you went on the 7 years. But thank you. It's been great learning from you, and I'm sure every small business that listens to this or anyone starting out, there's some great tips, and I love examples. So we have so many in today's interview. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shan, for having me. And just one last thing on the topic of personal branding.
Yes.
Actually, I've used my website, luluraghavan.com, to provide a lot of resources on personal branding. I also write a newsletter which goes out every Sunday at 6 p.m. IST on personal growth and development. And all the archives are on my website. So for anybody listening who's interested in this topic, they could check it out.
That's lovely. So luluraghavan.com, I will link it below in the video as well. I hope that you'll definitely visit it because I'm sure there'll be some great insights.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.